In every man's story, there is a silent war no one speaks of. Not the battles fought with fists or politics, but the invisible war inside a war waged against his own desire, against his own reflection. Lust, it enters quietly. First a glance, then a fixation, a momentary hunger, disguised as instinct. But like a parasite, it grows feeding not only on your body, but your will, your drive, your very soul. And if you let it, it will strip away your masculinity layer by layer until all that remains is a hollowed-out echo of what once could have been a king. You think lust is a luxury, but it is slavery. It is not pleasure. It is bondage. A beautiful prison painted with dopamine and illusions of connection. It masquerades as love, but it is sterile. It mimics passion, but it is parasitic. Jung once said, "No tree," it is said, "can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." And lust, my brother, is the root you must confront in hell, because only when you face the shadow that wants to consume you can you rise above it. Lust is not the desire for a woman. Lust is the abandonment of self. It's what happens when you forget who you are, when you trade your discipline for momentary indulgence. It's when you allow pixels on a screen to hijack your purpose. It's when your primal instincts override your sovereignty. Because that's what masculinity is, sovereignty. Not just the ability to take charge, but to master yourself, to harness your chaos, to walk through temptation, not as a slave, but as a sovereign, as a man who remembers the throne he was born to build. But the modern world has no interest in building men. It wants you docile, addicted, weak. It wants you chasing shadows and calling them women. It wants you on OnlyFans while your empire rots. It wants your ambition sterilized by endless stimulation, your aggression pacified by screens, your edge dulled by guilt, and your masculinity neutered by design. Look around you. You think this is accidental? You are in a matrix of seduction engineered for your collapse. The billboards, the music, the advertisements, they whisper the same lie. Indulge, consume, surrender. And most men do. They masturbate their power into oblivion. They become spectators of their own lives. They confuse ejaculation with intimacy. And they die, not physically, but spiritually, with their potential still locked inside their bones. A man addicted to lust is like a lion who's forgotten he has claws. He still looks powerful, but he's tame. Because lust doesn't just steal your strength. It rewires your brain. It makes you passive, reactive, needy. It creates a feedback loop of emptiness. The more you indulge, the more you crave, the more you chase, the more you lose. And over time, it erodes your soul, slowly, quietly, like a leak in the foundation of a great cathedral, until the pillars collapse. Masculinity begins with control, of self, of impulse, of direction. But lust is chaos pretending to be desire. It's the storm you let inside your temple. It's the pleasure that poisons you, the hunger that eats you from within. And here's the dark truth. Lust is never about the woman. It's about the wound. It's about the parts of yourself you haven't confronted, the loneliness, the boredom, the powerlessness, the unresolved shame. Lust is the anesthetic we use to avoid facing ourselves. The mirror we smash so we don't have to see our own reflection. And the world will sell it to you endlessly as empowerment, as freedom, as self-love. But in reality, it's spiritual suicide. To conquer lust is not to become celibate. It is to become sovereign. It is to look temptation in the eye and say, "You will not rule me." It is to walk through the fire and emerge forged, sharper, focused, relentless. It is to remember what you were born for, because the man who cannot control his desire will be ruled by it. And he will never build anything great. Not a family, not a legacy, not even himself. he will be forever chasing, forever consuming, forever empty. But the man who masters his lust, he becomes untouchable. His energy returns. His clarity sharpens. His presence deepens. He becomes a force, not because he seeks validation, but because he radiates purpose. Not because he suppresses his desires, but because he channels them into something higher. Discipline is not suppression. It is transformation. It is taking the fire of lust and forging it into the steel of focus. It is turning hunger into vision, desire into power, flesh into spirit. That is what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation, of becoming whole. Not by erasing your shadow, but by integrating it, by confronting the beast within and turning it into your ally, not your master. The world will tempt you to forget this. Every algorithm, every flashing image, every seductive whisper will tell you that you're missing out, that pleasure is the point. But pleasure is not the point. Purpose is. And there is no pleasure on earth that will satisfy a man who has abandoned his purpose. You were not built to chase dopamine. You were built to build, to hunt, to protect, to create, to lead, and most of all, to transform. So rise, stand, confront your lust, not with shame, but with understanding, not with guilt, but with strength. Look it in the eye and say, you will no longer consume me, because you were not made to be a slave to your impulses. You were made to be a master of them. You were not made to give away your power. You were made to wield it. And you were not made to die with your potential intact. You were made to burn, to become a living flame of discipline, devotion, and direction. This is the death of lust and the birth of a man. Lust is not an event. It is a pattern. A slow erosion of the masculine soul, repeated in micro-decisions, not just in the darkness of a bedroom, but in the quiet surrender of your attention. Every scroll, every fantasy, every compromise becomes a thread in the noose you're tying around your own neck. And the most dangerous part, you don't even feel it happening, because it masquerades as freedom, as self-expression, as normal. But normal has become a prison dressed as paradise. We live in a civilization that rewards comfort and punishes power. That tells boys to explore their feelings, but never to conquer their instincts. That tells men to be open and soft, but never disciplined and dangerous. And nowhere is this more clear than in how we treat lust. You're told it's natural to indulge, that it's healthy to be sexually liberated. But what they don't tell you is what you're sacrificing in the process. They don't tell you that every moment you waste in lust is a moment you could have been building, creating, becoming. They don't tell you that behind every empire that was never built is a man who gave in to distraction instead of destiny. And so we become a generation of ghosts, men with strong bodies but empty eyes, men who train at the gym but collapse in the presence of a woman's attention, men who chase the next hit of arousal like junkies, mistaking pleasure for progress. Because lust doesn't just steal your drive, it distorts your perception. It makes you see women not as sacred beings, but as consumables. It trains your brain to reduce the infinite mystery of femininity into a checklist of curves and camera angles. It divorces your heart from your instincts. It makes love impossible, because it confuses intimacy with ownership. And worst of all, it makes you weak, not in the way of muscle, but in the marrow, in the foundation of your masculine being. Because when you chase lust, you become reactionary, you become predictable. And anything that controls your reactions, controls your life, you cannot lead a life you are enslaved to. Look at history. Look at the great men, the ones who moved nations, changed the world, built legacies. Were they perfect? No. But they were disciplined. They knew that their energy was sacred. They knew that the seed of a man was not just biological, it was spiritual. It was the essence of creation, of legacy, of life force itself. To spill that recklessly is not liberation, it is suicide. Machiavelli warned of this. He said, a man who has no control over himself is not fit to rule over others. And yet, modern men can't even rule their own screens, their own thoughts, their own lust. This is not about shame. This is about sovereignty. This is about remembering what it means to be a man in an age that profits from your confusion, an age that feeds on your desire while pretending to feed your soul. But the soul is not fed by fantasy. It is fed by fire. The fire of purpose, the fire of restraint, the fire of clarity. And when you choose to master your lust, truly master it, you awaken a power in you that no enemy can match. Because the man who owns his desire cannot be manipulated. He cannot be baited. He cannot be bought. He becomes unpredictable. He becomes dangerous. He becomes free. This is the secret most will never tell you. That true freedom is not the absence of rules. It is the presence of self-command. That the man who can walk through a world of temptation untouched is not empty. He is full of direction, full of focus, full of meaning. Because while other men are chasing, he is becoming. And eventually, he becomes the kind of man others chase. But not for his looks, not for his possessions, for his energy. Because there is something magnetic about a man who is not hungry, who is not desperate, who walks through the world not needing validation, but radiating value. That kind of man, the one who has conquered his lust, becomes something higher than masculine. He becomes sacred. Because now his sexuality is no longer a weapon used against him. It is a sword he wields with precision, with intention, with power. And this is where masculinity is reborn. Not in the suppression of sex, but in the sanctification of it. Not in fear, but in reverence. Because a man who respects his own energy begins to respect everything around him, his time, his goals, his relationships, his word, his future. He stops tolerating mediocrity. He stops chasing dopamine. He stops outsourcing his worth to the eyes of strangers. And instead, he turns inward. And that's where the transformation begins. The descent into the shadow, the confrontation with the beast, the initiation into manhood. Not the boyish version sold by influencers, but the real thing, the storm-forged, blood-earned, bone-deep realization that you are the master of your world. And no amount of lust can buy that feeling. Because when you rise from the ashes of your addiction, when you stare down your demons and refuse to kneel, you become more than disciplined. You become divine. You become a man in full alignment with your instincts, your purpose, your truth. And nothing, no woman, no screen, no urge will ever rule you again. And in that moment of alignment, that rare, sacred moment when lust has no grip on you, you see with new eyes. You realize that most men are not lost because they lack ambition. They are lost because they are bleeding energy from 1,000 invisible cuts, and lust is the deepest one. You can have goals. You can read books. You can say affirmations and wake up at 5 a.m. But if you are enslaved to lust, you are building empires on sand. You are lighting a fire in the rain, because lust robs you of your center. It makes you scatter your focus, your dignity, your masculine edge, all for the illusion of intimacy that was never yours to begin with. You start to negotiate with your higher self. You start to settle. You convince yourself that desire equals connection, that stimulation equals happiness. But lust doesn't connect you. It divides you. It splits the masculine psyche, fragments the soul into pieces. The body that wants, the mind that judges, and the spirit that grows silent. And when a man is divided within, the world will divide him without. This is how they break you, not with chains, but with choices. Not with war, but with weakness. The same weakness that makes you swipe endlessly on your phone while your vision dies in your hands. The same weakness that makes you chase women who have nothing for your soul but everything for your addiction. The same weakness that turns your sacred masculine fire into smoke, visible but empty. You must understand this. Lust doesn't just distort how you see women, it distorts how you see yourself. It tells you that you are only as valuable as your last conquest, that your manhood is measured by your arousal, not your integrity, that desire is more real than devotion. But masculinity without devotion is directionless. It becomes a weapon without a cause, a storm without a cause. And that is why so many men today feel lost, not because they are inherently broken, but because their compass has been hijacked by lust. And when the compass is broken, the journey becomes a loop, around and around, in the same cycle of temptation, indulgence, emptiness, regret. But you are here because something in you is tired of the loop. You are here because the fire has not gone out, because the lion in you is still breathing beneath the layers of distraction. And I will tell you now what the world never will. Lust can be tamed. Lust can be transformed. Lust can become fuel. But only if you stop feeding it blindly. Only if you look it in the eye and say, I see you, but you will not own me. You do this not by suppressing the fire, but by giving it a higher direction. You must reclaim your sexuality as sacred, not sterile, not shameful, sacred. Every urge within you is a signal not to escape into fantasy, but to return to focus. Every pulse of temptation is not a command, it's a challenge, a call to rise, to remember. And the more you resist the urge to give in, the stronger you become, not just in body, but in soul. Your voice changes, your posture changes, your thoughts sharpen, your eyes deepen, because now instead of bleeding your energy into the void, you're forging it into something eternal. Creation, mastery, legacy, that is what lust fears most, your transformation. Because the moment you stop being a prisoner to pleasure, you become a builder of meaning. And meaning is far more intoxicating than lust will ever be. But it requires sacrifice. You must sacrifice the easy for the excellent, the urgent for the ultimate, the sensation for the sacred. You must sit in the fire and let it refine you, not consume you. And in doing so, you awaken a form of masculinity this world has almost forgotten, not soft, not aggressive, but grounded, fierce, noble, clear. The kind of masculinity that does not need validation because it radiates value. The kind that does not seek attention but commands respect through silent conviction. The kind that can walk through a world soaked in temptation and remain unmoved. Because real men are not those who get what they want. They are those who deny what they don't need. And when you stop needing lust, when you transmute it into leadership, into love, into legacy, you don't just become more masculine. You become more human, more whole. You become the man your ancestors dreamed you would become. Not perfect, but present. Not driven by desire, driven by destiny. And that man, that version of you, is unstoppable. So now we stand at the edge. You and the man you were born to become. One is shaped by impulse, constantly pulled by the tides of lust, chasing shadows, mistaking pleasure for purpose, and wondering why life always feels just out of reach. The other, forged by fire. He walks differently, not because he's immune to desire, but because he has made peace with it. He has transmuted it. He has taken the chaos within and made it bow to something higher. He has built a temple within himself, and lust is no longer the god he worships. That man does not chase women. He attracts a different world, a world of clarity, of power, of mission, A world that bends to his presence because he no longer negotiates with his weakness. He has seen the trap, he has named the lie, and he has refused the collar. The collar of addiction, the leash of lust. And in its place he wears a crown, not a crown of ego, not a crown of vanity, but a quiet golden crown of sovereignty. The kind that cannot be bought, cannot be stolen, and cannot be faked. It is earned. Earned through the long war against the self. The war you are in right now. But this is not where you fall. This is where you rise. This is where you stop being the victim of your urges and start becoming the author of your existence. This is where you stop leaking energy into illusions and start channeling it into something that outlives you. Because the truth is simple. Lust will take everything if you let it. But if you master it, it will give you back everything you forgot you had. Your discipline, your dignity, your focus, your freedom, and most of all, your fire. The fire to build, to lead, to love, to rise. The fire to break generational chains. The fire to become the man the world has tried to make you forget. The fire that does not burn for lust, but for legacy. You do not need to wait. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to begin right now, in this moment, not tomorrow, not when it's convenient. Now, say to yourself, I am done serving lust. I serve something greater now. I serve my mission. And from this moment on, let every breath, every action, every decision be made from that fire. Let your life become the evidence of a man who said no to comfort and yes to greatness, who chose power over pleasure, purpose over passivity, wholeness over hunger. Because when you do, when you truly embody that choice, lust loses its grip. And in its place, masculinity is resurrected. The masculine that leads, that protects, that creates. The masculine that is feared, honored, loved, and remembered. Be that man. Not someday, not eventually. Now.